Hi, I have recorded this video 15 times trying to make it perfect and script it, and I've just decided I'm not going to do that anymore. So, those of you that have done this in the past have made it look very, very easy. It is not easy to talk to a screen of nobody. So I typically am not one that's at a loss for words. I love to talk, but it's quite different when you're talking to nobody. So I am not going to record this anymore. I mean, what you get is what you're going to get. So let me just get right to it. My name is Keisha. I'm here basically to talk about my abortion doula program and why my program stands apart from other programs and the reason why I find that it's necessary to have an abortion doula program. I would be remiss in doing that if I didn't give you just a little bit of background about myself. I am a registered nurse and I'm a mom of 5 grown children. I'm married to my high school sweetheart since we were 15 years old. I always wanted to be a mom, and I still say that being a mom is the most important job I've ever had and the most rewarding. And I feel like that is typically the only reason that I was born, was to be the mom to these 5 beautiful children that I have. My career came by default only because, you know, at some point my kids were going to grow up and they weren't going to need a full-time mom anymore. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Because they don't need me in the same capacity. So I decided to go to school to be a nurse. I left out a part. I was a hairstylist for 20 years, which I did that to work around my kids' schedule. You know, it still was all about the kids. I wanted to be able to get out the house for a little bit, play, have a little bit of play money and do those things. But ultimately, I wanted a career where I could work it around my kids. And I have no regrets about that whatsoever, because I was there for every parent-teacher conference. I was there for every cheer competition, every basketball game. You know, I volunteered at the school, make Xerox copies. I lived my life exactly how I wanted it to. But at some point, I realized my husband would always tell me that I was going to need retirement. And what was I going to do? And my answer to that was, well, you have retirement. What do I need retirement for? We're going to live off your retirement. And that was very immature and naive of me to think that that was going to fly. When my youngest child, which was my son, when he reached the 10th grade, the light bulb went off like, oh my gosh, in 4 years, what am I going to do with my life? And so I started thinking very quickly. And I have a client, I had a client, her name was Miss Annie, and she's since gone on to be with the Lord. But I remember saying to her, Miss Annie, I'm going to go back to school. And she said, okay, well, what are you going to major in? And she was heavy on education. She, of course, was retired. She was, you know, in her 70s, I believe, at this time. And so she was all about education. And she said, what are you going to major in? And I said, well, I'm kind of torn between majoring in ministry or going into nursing. And I remember her saying to me, and she was a godly woman, she said, well, in ministry, how are you going to make money to be able to retire off of with that? And I was thinking to myself, that's the wrong answer, Miss Annie. You know, she was like, I think you need to go for nursing. And of course, I really didn't want to go for nursing because I knew that that was going to be super hard. And I didn't feel like I really wanted to be up for that challenge at that time. I did do it, and it absolutely was the worst time of my life. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it was horrible. When I say it was bad, it was bad. Oh my God. I mean, being older, more mature, went into it fully prepared, fully knew I was going to have to sacrifice. I thought I was up for the challenge. Nothing could have ever prepared me for what nursing school was going to be like. And I still suffer from anxiety to this day because of nursing school. However, I will say that I went on to work in labor and delivery because I thought that's what I wanted to do. Quickly realized that that wasn't for me. The pace was a little bit too fast for me. It was more of like an ER for pregnant women, but I knew that I wanted to do something in women's health Went from there, ended up in the NICU. Didn't ever want to work in the NICU. I said that all the way through nursing school that I did not want to work in NICU. And I know what you all are saying, Keisha, you have 5 kids, you want grandkids. Yes, but it's different when they're your own versus other people's kids. But that turned out to be a blessing for me, because in that experience, I realized that I really enjoyed working with the population of children, babies that were born to mothers that had substance abuse issues. And that usually is the population that most people don't want to be bothered with, because those little guys are unconsolable. They cry all the time because they're always in pain. It's not a happy situation. And sometimes the moms can, be a challenge as well. And a lot of nurses, in my opinion, from what I saw, were very judgmental. And a lot of these were Christian people, Christian nurses, that were very judgmental about these moms who had babies that were, born addicted to a substance. And so what I learned to do was read the mom's chart. And in reading the mom's chart, I learned that these moms are not just out here getting high off of drugs because, hey, let me get high and, mess my kid up and then have to go, my child has to go through withdrawals. No, a lot of them had history of depression. A lot of them had horrible, horrible things happen to them as children themselves. Many of them were suicidal. A lot of them had been put in prison because of things that they had done to try to overcome their addiction. It was just horrible situations. And so I really, really learned that I finally figured it out. That's the population that I want to work with. I want to work with the underdogs. I want to work with the population that is thrown away, that no one wants to be bothered with, that, people don't find hope in them. That's where I want to be. As a Christian woman, I moved to Phoenix for a job offer that I got. And, those that know me, which most of you don't, my husband and I, we always wanted to be in Phoenix because, one, we wanted to get away from DC. We just couldn't understand how people can be born and raised in the same place and never venture out and experience other things in life. Plus, I wanted to get away from the cold. I couldn't deal with the snow, the cold, the overcast. And to me, Phoenix was the perfect opportunity for that. I had gotten a job. I'm skipping around because it's just too much to really go into in this video. I'm trying to get to the point of how I ended up with the abortion doula program. I took a job at a NICU that was supposed to be a specialty unit for moms that are coming off of drugs, and we're trying to reunite them with their baby who is withdrawing for drugs and help the mom to now manage this situation and get clean and be able to take care of her newborn. And when I got to Phoenix, very early on, realized that the hospital that I was going to, that wasn't the situation. And I went into a very, very, very deep depression because of that. I didn't know how to fix it. It's hard to explain. I mean, I don't know, looking back on it, how I even got in that mental space. I could not control my emotions at all. I mean, I cried all the time, every day, and I just could not manage it. I mean, I've always been a very strong person and someone that's always been in control, and to not be in control of my emotions and not be able to control and turn the tears off, I just couldn't fake it anymore. I couldn't do it. And my daughter, Michaela, said to me, "Mommy, I really think you need to go to the hospital." And of course I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what else to do. And so I did. We call it the joint. And so if you ever hear me refer to the joint, that's what I'm talking about. Is I went into the psychiatric unit. This was in 2021. And I spent about 3 or 4 days there. And I honestly want to say, as hard as it was for me to actually go, it was the best thing that I could have ever done for myself. I learned a lot about myself and how I even ended up in that emotional state in the first place. Here I am. I love the Lord. I'm a Christian woman. I have, not a perfect life, but You know, I'm finally in the place that I wanted to be in. I'm in a beautiful state. I have, you know, these great things, and I just wasn't happy and couldn't figure out why. And I learned that through that, I had been wearing a mask for majority of my life. I had been wearing a mask because as a Christian woman, you're taught that, you know, you can't get piercings, you can't do tattoos, you can't do this. Everything is you can't. And the person that I was on the inside wasn't matching up with that. And so for majority of my life, I was trying to live as someone that I really was not. I mean, not the loving God part. I do still love God, and I did love God then, but I was listening to a lot of outside influences, and it was confusing me on the inside because God gave me these things. He gave me this creativity. He gave me, you know, the person that I am, but I was being made to feel like that there was something wrong with me if I felt that way. So I very quickly learned to wear a mask and, you know, suppress who I was as a person. And so I think going into the joint was a good thing for me, because after that I was like, bump this. I mean, this is who I am, you know. So fast forwarding, I'm getting there. I know I'm long-winded. People always say I talk forever, but I feel like there's something to be said in the small, minute things. I came out of the joint and I had no job, and I was like, what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do? I had found out about this job at Planned Parenthood, and I said, I don't know. Here I go again, wearing this mask. I said, I don't know, because, you know, as a Christian, I'm going to work at Planned Parenthood. I don't know what they're going to have me doing. And, you know, this whole thing in my head. And so I did the interview not thinking that I was going to take the job. You know, it was, you know, how you just like, I'm just going to go through the motions, because, you know, I had like 2 other interviews. I was like, I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm not really, you know, seriously considering working there. I came out of the interview and I said, oh my God, I really think I want to work there. It was a panel interview, and I was like, I think I really would want to work there. I found out on that Thursday I had gotten the job, and my brother called me on that Saturday. And he said, well, I think that job's going to be good for you, Keish. I said, you know, I don't know though. I don't know what they're going to have me doing. If it's dealing with abortion, I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about that. You know, we went through this whole thing, and he said, I think that job is going to be good for you. And that was the last time I would ever talk to my brother, because he was killed that night in a car fire. And so initially, I think I went into Planned Parenthood because those were the last words that my brother said to me. So I say that Planned Parenthood saved my life. And that's honestly how I feel even to this day, because when I started working there, first of all, the love and the compassion that I received during that time of my brother's death, because I literally started working like 2 weeks after my brother had died. And if anybody's ever been through that, you know, when someone dies in a tragic way that way. And if you can only imagine, you know, him dying the way he did in a fire, I mean, that obviously plays with your psyche. So I needed a lot of support during that time, and Planned Parenthood just did it for me. I mean, they really loved on me a lot, and I threw myself into work, and I learned so many things about myself and about this world and about being a Christian through working at Planned Parenthood. I learned that Christian people can be the enemy, those that call themselves Christians, because I would watch patients walk through the door of Planned Parenthood being yelled at and screamed at by people that profess to be lovers of God outside the door. And I would have to hold patients that would say to me, God hates them. God's not going to forgive them. Are they going to hell? All of the things. And I believe to this day that everything that I had gone through in my life, even from the conversation with Miss Annie, led me to that point, because I may have been the only sign of a real Christian that they may have ever seen. And that was my prayer every morning was, God, I pray that somebody will see you through me, through my actions in today. Now, that's not everybody's story, and I'm not saying that it is, but for me, it was enough for me to realize that God had me there. It wasn't by mistake. He had me there for a reason. And I had plenty of people come up to me after speaking engagements, after speeches, marches, whatever I was involved in at the time, and ask me, how do you deal with people that come against you because they know what you do? And you know what I told them? I don't care. I spent my entire life trying to be something that I wasn't. And I honestly believe that God has called me for a time such as this. And this is what I have chosen to do with my life, which brings me to the point of my abortion doula program. I started an abortion doula program while I was at Planned Parenthood. And the reason that we did it was because people need support when they're giving birth. People need support when they are after they give birth, when they're in a postpartum state. People need support when they have a loved one that has died. And those are all different types of forms of doulas. You have a birthing doula, you have postpartum doula, you have death doula. Very seldom do you hear of an abortion doula. Abortion is a loss. And you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you personally feel about it. And you may have made a different choice with your life. I had an abortion when I was 17 years old. And I was made to feel like until 2022 that there was something wrong with me because I had an abortion. And it was shameful. And I was never to talk about it. And I lived all those years. There were maybe 4 people on this earth that knew about that abortion. It wasn't until I came to Planned Parenthood and I said, you know what? I'm being a hypocrite. I'm in here and I'm telling these patients that God is going to forgive them and that God loves them. So why would a God that you call Abba Father, that you believe loves and cares for you, why would he turn his back on you because of this one moment in time in your life? And I was really speaking to myself. And I had to say, self, you are tripping. Stop being a hypocrite. God loves you. Do you believe it? Yeah, I do. Do I believe that I'm walking in God's purpose? Yeah, I do. Do I believe that women who have abortions, that the God loves them any less because they have made that decision? And we don't know. We shouldn't be judging anyway. We are supposed to be there to love and uplift and support and encourage. And I don't see the church doing enough of that. And I'm probably going to get slack about saying that. And you know what? I don't care. It is embarrassing to me to say that I would even be connected to people that are that cruel. Now, if you want to stand out there and then support this person and walk in with them, that is one thing. But to stand out from the street and yell and scream at them, I've had them yelling, screaming at me when I'm walking in. My abortion doula program is here to support women. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're poor, if they're rich, if they're black, if they're Asian, if they're Chinese, if they're white. If they're having an abortion and they want the support, loving support, non-judgmental support, non-clinical, non-medical support, my wish is that every woman, birthing woman, non-birthing woman, woman with a vagina that wants a doula will have one free of charge. And I'm not doing this by myself. I am merely the visionary behind this. There's a whole team of people whom I love that have jumped in behind me to support me in this mission, that believe wholeheartedly in what I'm saying and believe that they have seen the difference that it makes, that abortion doulas make in patient outcomes. Let's just say that it was a blessing. The thing that I thought I wasn't sure I wanted to do, my brother was right. God bless. Take care.